Hello, welcome to Life a Spiritual Gym. I'm deeply honored to have Tim and Erica join us today as our inspiring icons this month. And Tim, we were having a wonderful chat about your journey, and please share. You were just talking about this child that you saw in Calcutta. Please.
Well, it was actually as a young banker, I was, as all bankers do, went into the office at 8 o'clock in the morning and picked up the newspaper. And I'd been very moved by seeing the children on the streets and all the way around the area. But then suddenly to be confronted with this picture of a child drinking from a dog, I thought, what on earth's going on? How can we as human beings allow a dog to look after our children? He was a little boy, probably of 7, 8 or 9. And it was just a picture of a child which is semi-naked drinking from a dog, and the caption was, "The canine milk of love. Mongol has been suckling from this canine from as long as he can remember." And I felt, how on earth is this possible? So then I decided that we should start to help these children, and that is, I suppose, how the whole process started off. I only intended to do it for a year or so when I was in India, in Calcutta, but it rather took over my life, because what we found, it was not only necessary to feed children, to look after them medically, but the most important thing was to provide a home. And the home, I believe, is the fundamental thing about future hope, about what we're trying to do. Because every child, if you can give them stability, if you can give them the love and the care from responsible adults who will guide them, then anything can happen. And this is what you find with street children, is that you see them as children running around the streets with nothing. In India, many people see them as, or in the old days used to see them as almost vermin, with no future. But what we have found is that if you actually give them that chance.
Erica, you've been a partner to Tim through the journey. What were your challenges?
I started very different from Tim. At the time that I came to Future Hope, I was a qualified nurse, and I had just signed up to go into children's nursing, and got a place in Holland to do so, and asked whether I could. I planned it for in 6 months' time, so I came out for 6 months to work with Future Hope. I think the first real shock, or maybe it wasn't a shock, but was when I arrived and I was in this flat with, it was a 2-bedroom flat with, I think about 30 children.
35 children in a 2-bedroom flat.
I think we had about 30 at a time. And then you had a cook and an Indian staff member and Tim, and I fell into this. And
I promised her board and lodging.
In the evening. My thing of shock went more into, this is a way of living, and so it put that whole street living there in a different perspective. And when Tim and I drove back, first we had all the children, all the street children in the back of your car, and we would give them a ride around
That's right.
around the station. And then on the way back I said to Tim, this is really interesting. I didn't really feel that pity, but there were so many children there at 2 o'clock in the morning playing. Why is that? And then Tim said to me, well, that is because these children are too frightened to go to sleep, and if they go to sleep, they only go to sleep under the bright light of the lightning in the stations. But it is just they sleep during the day and then do a little bit of work to get a bit of money for the next meal, and then have a whale of a time and play and go and swim in the river and things like that. So that whole life of street children, and also the families there, is so different than what I expected. And I think as we were growing, and also growing in expertise, because by then we had already a small group of Indian staff, and then it was Tim, and we had a friend, Martin Graham. He did the finance, and I did the medical care. And Tim already had an informal school, and then the informal school started to really become actually quite good, and we could send children to local schools. And as that became very successful, we had too many children to get good places in local schools. And that's where we then started to decide, actually now we need to start to work on the school and upgrade that, so that more children can get a chance. And organically things started to grow, and it was still very reactive. And then there came a moment that we could become more proactive. So I then started, for instance, with local doctors, a vaccination program.
Eye care, dental care, and we changed from being a curative system where we were starting on preventative medicine. And that again went through into education as well. You're not desperately trying to get children to school, you're actually looking at their ability and guiding them in a certain direction. And we've taken it even further now. We've now have our own skills centre out in Barrackpore, where we train about 250, 300 young people every year in 10 different skills. But the idea is not only to train them in skills, but to train them in relevant skills, but also train them in what the work experience will be like. So when they go out to get jobs, then they will do well in interviews, they will make their own CVs well, and they should, after a short time, be able to get good jobs where they can survive, not only with the bare minimum, which is the minimum wage in Kolkata, which is about 7,000 rupees or so, but actually get a salary a little bit more than that, so that they can begin to save and they can begin to make their own lives.
So what would you, if there was one recommendation or guidance or sharing an insight to our viewers, how can they make a difference to either helping Future Hope or any other street child or any such organization? What is that one thing that you would, out of your experience?
I think passion and commitment, because it's not a fly by night. It is a long road. If you want to make a difference, and you have to also be aware that you are not infallible yourself. You are fallible, and therefore you need to be very settled and very stable. And there are lots of wonderful times. There are lots of awful times, but you've got to continue along the road. But it is the passion, without being too emotionally involved. But you have to have that passion. Don't get over involved, because otherwise you're useless. But the commitment. I don't know. Would you say that, or?
I have something very different.
Yes.
I would really like to say that although India has gone through years of huge prosperity, there is a huge problem at the bottom of the society. And what worries me, even today, after 33 years, that there is a huge gap, and probably even a growing gap, between the rich and the poor. And I would like to ask anyone who has the ability to help, either as a person with your expertise, or if you have the finance, to always know that there are people at the bottom of the society. If you give them a little bit, and if you give them the opportunity, they can fly as well.
Sure. So that was a wonderful conversation, and I hope that our viewers would take some bite-size light from this, that be the compassion, have patience, because none of us are perfect, and give a chance, because we got chance too. And let's work on making this world a better place. Thank you so much, Erica and Tim, for your insights.
Thank you so much.